I think she's read Let Them. I reckon she read it over the holidays because I know that Oprah, who I believe, they're in a group chat for sure. Oprah read it. Oprah loved it. I think she said, Michelle, not passive aggressively, but just said, I think you'd get a lot out of this.
Yeah. Let them have their party.
Yes, let them have their party, but let me not come.
And welcome to Mamamia Out Loud. It's what women are actually talking about on Monday, the 20th of January. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens, and we are in a new studio today. We are making the pivot to video, which makes us sound really up with the times.
And I just keep shouting, change is exciting.
Yes,
she does.
Because you know that Holly and I innately resist change. We're not sure about it. But we are in a new studio. We've got like a fancy backdrop and everything.
This isn't actually going to be our final home. This is our temporary studio while we build a new studio. For ourselves, we're actually borrowing a studio to sort of get ready to go into our new studio.
And it's really cool where we are. It's got like hand chairs. It's got like
it's got fancy
Bruce
soap
Lee
in the
posters.
bathroom. We don't have that in the office. Fancy soap. I'm going to make a complaint.
We fit right in. Anyway,
there are some men around too.
There are, and also I should note, if you follow us on Instagram, if you don't, you should. Our videos are going to look slightly different. So give us your feedback. We don't need to ask for it. They'll give it to us.
Oh, yes.
They'll let us know what they think.
Indeed.
They'll tell us. Anyway, it's a massive news week this week, with the tentative ceasefire coming into effect in Gaza, Trump's inauguration in the early hours of tomorrow morning, and, as we're about to jump into on today's show, many TikTok creators melting down about what's going on with their platform in the US. So, is the TikTok ban still in place? Might it come here? And why does it matter? Also, I'm not the only one having a year of Nup. Michelle Obama has rejected her invite to the Trump party, and we think it's big let them energy. And Vanity Fair ran a full-blown cover story about Meghan and Harry, along with an 8,000-word piece. We read it, so you don't have to. Let's go, Jessie.
We wanted to hop on here and say goodbye to all 14 million of you guys.
It's just an app, but it's our whole life now.
Yeah. Has anyone else just been crying on this app all night?
This is funny.
Because it feels like we're losing, like, a community.
It's just like, why would they take this app from the girls? Like, if you wanted to take it from the boys, not the girls, not the girls. I cannot stop crying.
It's emotional and it's sad. I feel so sad.
That music's so funny. Americans are nothing if not earnest. I love them.
I wonder how you actually would go about taking it away from just the boys. I quite like that idea as a possible solution.
Late on Saturday, US time, TikTok users in America found their app had stopped working. This was a few hours before a federal ban on the app was due to take effect. So when they opened TikTok, as some of them do every 2 to 3 minutes, they were presented with the following message. Sorry, TikTok isn't available right now. A law banning TikTok has been enacted in the US. Unfortunately, this means you can't use TikTok for now. We are fortunate that President Trump has indicated that he will work with us on a solution to reinstate TikTok once he takes office. Please stay tuned. Because you wouldn't want TikTok to be full of propaganda, would you?
No,
You wouldn't want any of that.
not at all. Exactly.
Let's take 45 steps backwards, because for years, lawmakers in Congress in the US have been worried about TikTok's Chinese ownership. This is for a lot of reasons. TikTok is owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, and US officials are worried that Chinese laws, China is of course run by the Chinese Communist Party, could compel them to share information about their users. Sensitive data, they could monitor users, they could influence public opinion or elections. It could be used to gather intelligence on US citizens.
So, Jessie, is the heart of this that because China is a communist country, that ByteDance is essentially controlled by the Chinese government? Is that the subtext?
Correct. And that we know that TikTok, in terms of their settings, they can get details about your location, your browsing history. That's one element of it. The other element of it is if it is run by the Chinese Communist Party, then how about things like propaganda, spreading misinformation? They have control in that way, which the US has been really, really apprehensive about.
And the TikTok algorithm is widely acknowledged as a whole other level from every other social media algorithm.
Yeah.
So nobody knows exactly how that works, and that is proprietary information that a lot of people would like to get their hands on.
It's also, other stakeholders have said youth mental health, economic concerns. Obviously, this isn't a US-owned company, so that worries them as well, whereas Twitter are US-owned. Blocking TikTok, we should also say, it wasn't going to be unprecedented. India has blocked the app, as has Pakistan. And interestingly, it has no presence in China. You might remember.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't use it there. They use a different app.
That
Interesting.
is worrying in
It is
itself.
worrying.
That's a bit like
Yeah.
how the Silicon Valley tech bros don't let their kids have phones.
Yeah, so we're going to put this, this is what some people say, we're going to put this in the US, we're going to spread misinformation, propaganda, we're going to turn you all on each other and see what happens.
So an example of how it could be used, I was reading, is so, for example, one country invades another country.
Yeah.
Suddenly your TikTok feed could be full of people in the country that was being invaded very happy about the invasion, and you could be led to believe via an algorithm and via propaganda that maybe that invasion was actually very cool.
Yeah, exactly right. So you might remember all the way back in 2020, President Donald Trump signed executive orders to ban TikTok. He said it was a national security risk. They wanted to force TikTok to sell US operations to an American company. So basically have an arm where the American side gets to do its own thing. It's got some independence. And ByteDance said, absolutely, we will not do that. Then in April 2024, US Congress passed a law saying either ByteDance sells TikTok to a non-Chinese owner or we're shutting you down. And they chose the latter. So boom, 170 million Americans who use the app suddenly couldn't. Until they could. Less than 24 hours later, TikTok was restored. In a statement, TikTok said, "We thank President Trump for providing the necessary clarity and assurance to our service providers." They basically said, we don't want to penalise the Americans using it, allowing over 7 million small businesses to thrive. They stand for the First Amendment right and against arbitrary censorship.
Are businesses thriving on TikTok? Small businesses? I don't know.
Some do, and some came out. I've seen a lot of business owners say that they've built their businesses off the back of TikTok.
They did in ads made by TikTok.
Yeah, but think about the economic impact. Think of, the tween skincare craze, right? Almost entirely fed by TikTok, right? That has entirely changed the beauty industry. So imagine if you take that out.
For some
what that
small
would do to
businesses,
that industry.
like say a cupcake shop on the corner, if you could leverage, TikTok properly, you can get your message out to a lot of people in a very free way. It's imperfect.
Jessie, have you met an algorithm, and are you actually kidding? What we know about TikTok is that it's different to every other social media app in that followers don't really matter. And there's also no real rhyme nor reason to what goes viral. So I agree that, as you said, Holly, TikTok globally has a massive cultural influence in making trends.
And then that has a commercial impact in selling stuff.
It can, but you don't have any control over that because it's so random. So you can make a video that goes absolutely viral, and then you can make 100 other videos that just don't, and you don't know why, because it's about this algorithm. So I think that is just such, and of course the other platforms are going the same way now because everybody's trying to be like TikTok.
Which
so I think the idea that it's helping small business, it is just not true.
I think it is. I would argue with you on that. I think especially in like the travel space or whatever, when you'll notice it, you'll go traveling and everyone is going to this clifftop bar.
Yeah.
Why are they going to that clifftop bar? Because they've seen it. People, that's how travel has been. Things like
I see
that
what you're
have
saying.
been curated.
Yeah. So, but it's accidental. Like you can't manufacture that unless, guess what? You pay for advertising on TikTok. You can't say, oh, I've got 1 million followers, I'm going to put out this thing and 1 million people will see it. Maybe nobody will see it.
There are a lot of businesses in the US which would have a TikTok department, and that's what I'm kind of interested about. But for context, Trump took a liking to the app last year because he used it a lot for his presidential campaign.
He was kind of good at it.
And it's unclear whether he actually has the power at this point to overrule the TikTok ban. My question is, Mia, what do you think happens now?
I think we know that over the last, or since Trump won the election, it's just been a procession of tech billionaires and CEOs making their way to Mar-a-Lago, where he's been camped out, to kiss the ring and to curry favour with him. Because ironically, yes, he was the one that started all of this by saying TikTok should be banned.
And then he's a saviour. I can't.
But of course, that is
Everyone
such a
forgot
great
the beginning of the
course,
story.
but that is such a great plot point, you know. And nobody remembers the beginning of anything. Everybody's just about what's happening right now.
And also, he used to be at war with lots of the tech bros. He said Zuckerberg should be in jail. He was at war with lots of them. And now they're all on side. So he's very much positioning himself as the hero of free speech, social media, those guys, no regulation. So it's very on brand for him at the moment that he would be the saviour.
So we're about to enter the new phase of this reality show, and Trump, you know, when it was very chaotic last time and it was all about resistance and it was this, you know, combative situation between Trump and everybody, now it's completely different this second term, and it's a lot more about deference. There's no defiance, it's just deference. So what Trump would want is for it to be banned, because it's much more interesting if it's banned and then he brings it back versus him stepping in before it's banned. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so everyone's
yeah.
experienced it. It's a lot more interesting, a lot more drama,
So
a lot more attention for him.
Biden, the reason it came back, Biden has sort of said, I'm going to leave it to Trump.
Yeah, because he's out. He literally has about 6 more hours.
And there are all kinds of rumours about the sort of coalitions that are being put together that might be palatable for the government, the US government, to be able to say, look, now it's part American owned and all those things. And the CEO of TikTok is going to be at the inauguration, sitting right next to all the others.
Right on the stage.
Yeah, right
so
next
it's
to
going to be
everybody.
literally just a
So
little
do you
line
think
of them.
they'll sell some of it to a
No,
US owner? or-
because of that algorithm. So some people are like, oh, he's just setting it up so he can sell it to Elon Musk, who is vice president in waiting.
Is that a ridiculous?
Why that won't happen is that this algorithm is so, some say dodgy, some say incredibly powerful. It's probably both. No one wants that IP to get out to competitors, and Twitter is a competitor. So even though Elon would love it, and Trump would probably like Elon to have it, Trump's all about the deal. So his favourite thing is when people are fighting with each other. So he's now got the CEO of TikTok, he's got Mark Zuckerberg, he's got Elon, he's got Jeff Bezos. They're all just competing with each other. Sam Altman from OpenAI. They're all just competing with each other to see who can do whatever Trump wants.
My kids confidently told me that Mr. Beast is buying it. So
I
that's
actually
a big
heard
story,
that rumour
yeah.
too.
And they're like, don't worry, he's going to save it. And I'm like, sounds legit. Anyway, I want to talk about the response, because we started this segment by playing all the sound of all the TikTok creators crying. Now, it's easy to mock that. I can understand it. I mean, the thing we were just arguing about whether or not people make money from TikTok, of course they do in different ways. You know, if Instagram was suddenly disappeared tomorrow, that I would take a financial hit, like I literally would. I market my books through that. We promote our podcast through that. We make content through that. So it's, for some people, it's about livelihood, but for many, many, many more, it's really interesting in the way we've completely changed our view of what media is, and how we now see the social platforms that we check, as you said, Jessie, every 2 or 3 minutes, not as private companies or media organizations, but like air and water.
Human rights, basic services.
Basic services, human rights, things we can't do without, but our lives are there. How could you take that? And I know it's really hard not to sound a bit boomery to say this, but that's kind of really sad. It's really sad.
It's addiction, isn't it?
It's literal addiction. It's made, I think it's really interesting to see that, yes, we love it. It's constant distraction. It's our particular choice of entertainment and all those things, but it isn't air or water. It isn't real human connection. And it's really difficult I think, for people to get their heads around the attachment people have. So you probably would have seen a lot of headlines over the weekend saying Americans are now logging on to other Chinese-owned social media platforms.
This made me laugh.
Particularly one called Red Note, because they would rather almost anything than to not have their version of TikTok when they open their phone. It's wild.
The headline, TikTok evacuees would rather learn Mandarin for Red Note than use Meta, which is funny because you might have noticed in the last week, Meta changed how your grid looks. Have you noticed this?
Yeah.
They've changed it into the TikTok dimensions.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look, as you were saying with content creators, I understand crying as a content creator. 85% of those content creators are women and they're making a decent living. There's a creative fund.
I don't know how many. No, the creative fund gives almost nothing. So I think some people are making money. Most people are not making money. So I think what they dangle is the prospect of making money. You know, oh, you could go viral. This video, you just post again, you could go viral, you could go viral. But even the people who go viral, can they then monetize that virality? Because it's so random, it's really hard.
It is, but I think it would be wrong to suggest that no one's making money off it. Like they are. Some people have a real livelihood.
Also, it makes them famous and they can spin that off into other things.
Yeah, I think it's more branding, you know.
And everyone has said TikTok, unlike any other social media app ever created, will make you go famous faster. It will make you go viral faster than anything. In that way, it's easier.
Yeah, I agree. I think also, though, I think it's interesting what you said, Hol. If someone said, I'm taking your phone away tomorrow, I would be, because I'm addicted to it and also because I assume having a phone and having connection to the internet is a human right. Like I get this idea of what do you mean I can't have it?
And for a generation, this isn't only an entertainment app. It's news, it's Google.
They're also used to being told no.
Well, yeah, but I'm trying to think of a comparison. I mean, think about you in the 80s or whatever, if someone tried to take your TV. Like it's a similar comparison. Yeah. But I think that if it is something, if it's the way that you search anything, it's like, how do I even live now? It's not like any other product.
It's interesting, though, because without wanting to go too weedy, what Mia's saying about the way the algorithm owns us all is true. But also this trend, and we've talked about it, all the tech guys who are going to be sitting very front and center on that stage tomorrow, is in Zuckerberg's interview with Joe Rogan, he very much paints himself and the other tech companies as massive victims of government overreach, right? So he very much says, you know, governments all over the world, and I assume when he says that, he is also partly referencing Australia and our upcoming social media ban, are trying to limit our business, trying to take your information away from you, trying to take away your free speech. And so it's very on brand at the moment, very popular.
Because they don't want to be regulated.
Yeah, they don't want to be regulated. They want to make more and more money. But happily, they've also made their users, including all of us, believe that their services are so essential and that they're trying to be taken away. And so that's why it's so genius in a way that when Americans opened TikTok yesterday and saw that it was gone, the President Trump of it all in that message was immediately like, but Daddy Trump is going to come along and he's going to give all you kids back your TikTok. And all those people, young people, many of whom probably are not sympathetic to President Trump in general, are going to be like, thanks, Dad. He saved us.
If those companies have so far been stifled by government overreach.
Can you imagine what will happen
Can you
when
imagine
they're not?
what would happen when they're not?
Full bush in a bikini. Full bush in a bikini. Full bush in a bikini. Like, full bush in a bikini.
Friends, it wouldn't be the start of the year without important pubic hair news, and today we have some. Full bush in a bikini, as you just heard, is a phrase that I'd like to consider for our first Out Loud merch drop because it speaks to a growing full bush movement in the pants of Gen Z women, while Gen X and Boomer women are feeling very excited about finally having on-trend pubes. Happy days. All right, let's unpack these pubes together. The woman you just heard is the one we have to thank for this new phrase. Her name is Suninda, and she's a regular person on TikTok, funnily enough, who was just scrolling through Etsy and found this bikini that she quite liked. And underneath there were all these reviews from people who'd bought the bikini, including someone who'd bought it and posted a picture of herself. And in this picture, it was a positive review. But Suninda noticed that she had a very, very full bush. Now, nobody can actually locate this photo, because yes, I have tried. The sentiment is being widely embraced by the 13 million people who've watched that video about it. Now, this does seem to be bad news for laser people who might want to consider merkins because laser is sadly not reversible. There has been some really awesome commentary overall translating to you do you. One particular poetic observer noted, Pubic hair, often viewed through a lens of societal unease and taboo, is here reclaimed as a form of personal expression and empowerment. And another person brilliantly described it as age 1 week, born on TikTok, appearance dense and luxuriant. The movement's unofficial motto comes from this comment: every time you keep your bush, despite societal pressures, an angel gains its wings.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen this at the beach this summer?
No.
I've seen it in the wild.
Although I think I see it anyway because I hang around with normal people.
Yeah, exactly
Who
right.
still have pubic hair.
I've definitely
That's
seen
a
it.
very judgmental comment. Mia's glaring at me because it made it sound like I'm saying that people who don't have pubic hair are not normal.
No,
I retract that comment.
You misread my look. It was, what situations are you in where you see other women's pubic hair?
When
Just
you're,
out of interest.
When you're at the beach and it's coming out of the sides of their bikini
Oh,
bottoms.
so you have seen it in the wild?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're saying you don't think it's intentional.
But
It might just be
I don't think
yeah.
I've seen it in the wild as like a cool TikTok trend. I think I've just seen it in the wild as the way that women look when they go swimming at the beach sometimes.
I wonder if as a result of the new cut of bikinis, when I say new, let's say the
Yes.
last 2 years,
Yes.
it's inevitable. Women have gone, I either remove with a tweezer every single hair I've ever grown, or I just embrace this. Because the cut at the front, I quite like not a boy leg, but like,
oh, yes.
I don't do a G-string or
No.
whatever. I
The high 90s.
the high 90s thing.
leg.
Big
And you
pants,
can get a
please.
great bikini, like you can do your bikini line. You've not even half removed what's going to be on show. So I think people have just gone, it's all too hard, let the bush fly.
Tomorrow is the inauguration of Donald Trump as the returning president of the USA. And look, we're going to be pulling Amelia Lester out of the corner she's likely rocking in to attend our debrief when we're going to record a little episode about the event just for subscribers. But someone who is not accepting her invitation to the party, which unlike the last time Trump took office is going to be a big, well-attended affair with huge, very well-funded victory parties all over town, is Michelle Obama, who is, we've decided, giving big let-them energy to her year of Nup. Her husband is going. Hillary Clinton is going. Kamala Harris and Doug are going. Former Presidents Bush and Clinton and the current one, we think he's called Joe Biden, will be there, of course, with Jill, we assume. But Michelle has said nope, not doing it. And I think it means something. Last time Trump was standing on that White House stage in his big coat, it was the Obamas who were leaving office. And she said, understandably perhaps, that she cried her eyes out afterwards. Here's a little bit of what she said about it.
To sit on that stage and watch the opposite of what we represented on display. There was no diversity. There was no color on that stage. There was no reflection of the broader sense of America. I cried for 30 minutes straight, uncontrollable sobbing, because that's how much we were holding it together for 8 years.
So this time she is protecting her peace and nupping it. So we believe is Nancy Pelosi. I wonder if this is all part of some of the lessons being learned from the Trump era, like fuck the rules, fuck the niceties, we're going to do what we want to do. Because former presidents' wives have always gone to these things. Michelle Obama, though, is one of the most high profile of all of those women. And she is not going to go and smile and shake hands with the man she's openly criticized in the past, unlike a lot of the people who are going to be there who have said awful things about Trump before, but now suddenly, as we just discussed, are saying, oh, actually, he's fine. Here, have some money. Let's have a party. Mia, does Michelle's nup have a broader significance?
I thought it was really interesting that she did this after last week or the week before not attending Jimmy Carter's funeral as well.
What was the reason for that? Has she said what the reason was?
The reason that she gave for not attending Jimmy Carter's funeral, he was the oldest living president and every other living president was there. There was some really funny memes and videos about that, but she said she had a scheduling conflict and it was later discovered that she was on holiday, I think in Hawaii or somewhere. And so that actually all sparked up a little bit of divorce rumours over the weekend. How are the Obamas doing? They haven't been seen in public for a while, which Obama hosed down by posting a happy birthday photo with him and Michelle holding hands over a table, and she commented, "Love you, honey." Anyway, her nup, I think, Holly, you've nailed it. It's if you've read Becoming, which we all have, Michelle's autobiography, she talks so much about being the first Black First Lady and how she had to just be so diligent about not giving anybody anything to weaponize against her and against Black women and Black people by, being perfect essentially. And imagine what it must have felt like for her to then leave and then see basically Melania just came in and took a big dump over what that role has traditionally been, including my personal highlight of wearing the jacket saying, "I don't care, do you?" when she was going to visit children in cages. So I think she's literally just drawn a line in the sand. She's having the year of Nup, just like you, Hole. And I think that everybody's seen, particularly women, you can do everything right. You can, Kamala Harris, you can be, even Hillary Clinton, you can be qualified, you can do all the right things, you can say all the right things, and it doesn't seem to matter.
I think she's read Let Them. I reckon she read it over the holidays because I know that Oprah, who I believe, they're in a group chat for sure. Oprah read it. Oprah loved it. I think she said, Michelle, not passive aggressively, but just said, I think you'd get a lot out of this.
Yeah. Let them have their party.
Yes, let them have their party, but let me not come. And that's what she's decided to do. Because
I ask you though, Jessie, because you're very good at this, what's the respectful line of Nup in that situation? Because when you lose, you shake the hand of the winner. And, the progressive side of politics have made a big deal of that after the insurrection in Washington in 2021. So you shake the hand, you follow the niceties. But does that mean... Is there like a disrespectful line of Nup? Because does that also mean you have to go, you were right, I was wrong?
I reckon she did that in 2016. Watching the Obamas after Trump said that Barack Obama was the head of ISIS, that he wasn't born in America, he was born in, just total falsehoods about them. For them to show up at his inauguration and shake his hand and be respectful, they did their job. She's no longer the first lady. I think your job's finished. It's so fine.
Yeah, whereas as your role as a former president, your job's kind of never finished.
It's different. And she wasn't the president. She was the first lady. And
because Obama sat next to Trump at the funeral.
Yeah.
And they were famously seen, he was sort of like laughing. I mean, he was making small talk, he'd have to.
And let's not forget that there is one president in all of US history who did not show up to an inauguration, and it was Donald Trump and Melania. They did not show up to Joe Biden's inauguration. So I totally respect her move. But there's another Nup story this week. I'm not sure if you've seen it. So Novak Djokovic is also embracing his year of Nup, some would say. We're going on to 20 years of Nup with Djokovic. But
you're a tennis correspondent.
Yes, Australian Open. So this is the news today. He won his quarterfinal last night and then he refused to speak to the reporter on the court. He just kind of said something to the audience and then walked off. And he was speaking afterwards about why he made that decision.
A famous sports journalist here from Australia who works for a main broadcaster of Australian Open at Channel 9 decided to mock Serbian fans, and he made insulting and offensive comments towards me. So I was hoping he's going to apologize in public, which he hasn't done yet. Neither did the Channel 9. So that's the only reason why I didn't do the interview.
So what did Jones actually say? Here's a grab of what he said the other night.
Back to Melbourne Park where you can see the Novak Djokovic fans there in full voice. Yeah, the chants are quite extraordinary. Novak, he's overrated. Novak's a has-been. Novak, kick him out. Boy, I'm glad they can't hear me.
But wasn't he just repeating what the chanters were saying?
No,
he was responding.
They were actually supporters, and he mocked the Serbian fans, which Novak hated. I reckon it's totally fair enough for him to finish playing a match, which he won. He is, he's been the number one in the world for a very long time. I'm not sure if he is right now, but he has been. To be mocked by a commentator like that, it's like, nah, I'm not going to come out and talk to you. And then this morning, Jones came out and apologised.
Remember when Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high, about Donald Trump?
Yeah. Now it's when we go low.
We go to Hawaii.
We don't go. We don't go.
It's interesting because I reckon that fits into the screw the rules too, because it's like you have to give an interview to this particular journalist. This is the official broadcaster. You absolutely have to. This is how it works. It's always been done like this, so on and so on and so on. And there's just a whole lot of people, powerful people, it has to be said, who are able to do it, just going, not gonna, don't like you. That's not okay.
On that note, I've got a little announcement. For the first time in Out Loud history, I am changing my word of the year.
Oh,
so
no, Mia,
I should have known there was a problem because Out Loud, as we record our Word of the Year episode just before we go off on Christmas break, and we release it on New Year's Day, as is tradition. But when I was away, even before the episode came out, I couldn't remember what the word is.
I actually can't remember right now.
It was make.
Okay,
Make.
I don't want that word.
It was a bit
I
lame.
refuse to have it. My word is going to be let them. And I know I'm breaking two rules. Not only am I changing my word, but I'm usually the stickler for you can't have more than one word, but I'm just going to, it can all be made one word or with a hyphen. And I didn't know about let them before, and I've just found myself using that so much in January when I couldn't remember what my other word was. So I'm changing my
Lethem. If we turn it into one word, Lethem.
The new season of I'm a Celebrity premiered last night and no one recognised each other. That's hyperbolic, but in an article for news.com.au, Nick Bond writes, "It makes for an awkward I'm a Celeb premiere when even the stars don't recognise each other." Samantha, who featured on Married at First Sight, asked Sam Tyday, the former captain of the Brisbane Broncos, "So, what's your talent?" I really like the use of the word talent.
Who else is in there?
But before you went in, don't you reckon you'd bone up on like every possible person who might be in there? So you could go, Sam!
Holly, you could have done that and you still wouldn't have come across some of these. I'm going to throw some names at you. Zach Toohey.
No.
Guess. Come on, guess.
Zach Toohey. Does he have a
Sounds
low-carb beer
like a
brand?
footballer.
No, you know what? He might, but he's an AFL player.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Tina Provis. Come on, Tina.
Influencer.
Shit, I feel bad.
Love Island contestant.
There we go.
Probably has more
Reality
followers than
star.
both of you put together on
I'm sure
Instagram.
she does. I'm sure she'd be going, Holly.
Yeah, exactly.
Wainwright.
Max Belegdi.
No, never heard.
No.
He's so famous.
Who's
He
he?
is a UK TikTok creator with, 500,000 followers or
Shit.
something. There's also Nikki Buckley.
Know who
Why do
she
I
is?
feel like you know?
Sale of the Century
Yeah, know who she is.
co-host.
Yep. Maddie J.
Know who he is.
From The
lovely,
Bachelor?
lovely chap.
Podcaster, married to
Our
Laura
friend
Byrne.
Laura Byrne. Yep.
Shayna Jack.
I know
Decorator.
broadly who
Olympian.
she is.
Oh, my God. You're thinking of, I know who you're thinking of,
She's a
but not
sports
her.
person.
She's on a
You're thinking
TV
of
show.
the one who's on the block.
Does
That's
houses.
Shayna Blaze.
Oh.
She'd be great.
Are they different?
Yes, they're
Shayna
different.
Jack swims.
Oh.
Reggie Bird. Do
Oh,
we
yes.
remember Reggie?
Mm-hmm.
She won Big Brother.
Oh, Reggie.
Yeah.
I remember
love that.
Reggie.
Reggie lost her sight, didn't she, recently?
She's,
got a
vision
degenerative
impaired.
condition. Wow, that'll make it a challenge in the jungle.
Point is, there's a lot of diversity in the fame element. My pet hate is when I see people comment on a news article about a famous person with who.
Yeah.
Because, look it up. And also, it's a flex. You're trying to say, I don't even know who that is.
I think you're being harsh. I often will be reading something or looking at a picture of someone, and in my mind will be the sentence, I do not know that person.
Yeah, but
sorry
you can
to
just
that man.
look it up,
I do
but
not
it's-
know who he is.
It's a it's not a nice thing to
No.
say who.
I'm not saying it in a disparaging way. I'm just recognizing the complete fragmentation of fame.
And that's what this speaks to, is that fame, I think it's what makes the show really interesting. The only household name in this is Dave Hughesy. But it speaks to how fame means something different to every generation.
Yeah.
I love the idea of a household like your household, Holly. I guarantee that your kids know these people.
I'm
I
sure
don't
they do.
think Gen Zs would even know who Hughesy was.
No, true.
I tell Brent all the time that the most embarrassing thing he says all the time is never heard of them, which is what he says. It will be said many times during the Hottest 100 countdown, but he'll be like, Sabrina Carpenter, never heard of them. You're like, mate, shut up. It's embarrassing.
I always think, though, you turn up in the jungle, you don't recognise anyone. How do you ask the question? I like the what's your talent?
What's your talent? That's great.
I like that.
5 years after Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's royal exit, Vanity Fair has published an extensive 8,000-word cover story, which is a lot of words. Just for reference.
It's a novella.
Yeah, that is actually. Your regular cover story or your regular feature online would probably be about 2,000 words, maybe 3,000 words if it was very chunky. And the most interesting part about this story is that there were no interviews granted by the actual couple themselves. But this story examines their post-royal life, and it was obviously timed to coincide with the scheduled launch of her new show on Netflix, which was postponed for a couple of months because of the bushfires. It was written by contributing editor Anna Peel, and it interviewed lots and lots of people who've worked with them since they moved to America or who know them. And it sort of is all about how they've navigated this transition over the last 5 years.
Have you actually read 8,000 words?
Oh, every word. Are you kidding?
How about you?
Absolutely.
I need to confess.
Holly and I broke our thumbs clicking on it.
I looked at it and I went, Jessie, you're going to die one day and you don't want to spend 25 minutes of your life
The cover
reading
line
this.
was American Hustlers, which I think is really
I
good.
liked the cover. I thought that was interesting, but I went, life's too short. So I thought you'd fill me in.
Yeah, so the cover was a pap shot of the two of them in sunnies in some public event. I'm going to give you the 5 takeaways so you don't have to read it. First one was all about workplace drama. So there's a source that described Meghan's management style as mean girls teenager, suggesting that she'd undermine employees by talking behind their back and gnawing at their sense of self. And multiple employees told Vanity Fair that they reportedly took extended breaks or underwent therapy after working with her. I think everyone should have therapy anyway. So.
Were there multiple sources? Was that one source? Like how
stacks of sources through the whole thing, but almost all of them were anonymous. So you have to take all of this with a big pinch of salt.
Okay.
The second theme of this article was about the production chaos around the podcast that she recorded with Spotify. They signed, you might remember, a $100 million deal, I think, with Spotify to produce some podcasts. Meghan produced a podcast called Archetypes, which we know, and this article talked about people who worked at Spotify saying that she'd agree to provocative ideas but then walk them back on the show. So like one episode was meant to be about the word slut as being this archetype that women are called, but she didn't want to say the word slut. She didn't even want to say the word bitch.
No,
so the
she didn't.
Bitch episode was called the B word. And
I thought this was a bit unfair too, right? Because one of the things that must be very hard to be Meghan and Harry, and I know that like the world's smallest violin, but you would know that everything you said in any setting, any creative brainstorm session, anything with any employees, that Vanity Fair and every other media publication in the world would love to know, right? So imagine that we're having a brainstorming session about what's our new podcast going to be, and I have a terrible idea and you have a worse idea, Jessie, because that would definitely happen, and Mia just has an embarrassing idea because
my idea is just lame.
It's like, this is what that is. You know what I mean? It's like they can't do that because they're so high risk. Everyone's like, can you believe that Mia Freedman said that thing? You know, and or the other thing is that I can picture this very clearly too, that they would enthusiastically say, because Harry, for example, apparently wanted to do one where he interviewed high-profile sociopaths, including Vladimir Putin, Mark Zuckerberg, and Trump.
I think that sounds like a great
This was actually my favourite thing in the whole interview. For people who've ever worked on podcasts or who've worked in media, trying to land interviews and particularly trying to land podcast guests in this very crowded market is challenging, right? So a lot of work goes into it. Very hard. So the idea that Harry wanted to make this podcast about was about how men who have traumatic events happen to them in the childhood. Like he said, my mother was basically murdered. My life was traumatic. Donald Trump, Putin, all these other people, perhaps they had traumatic events, but what made me grow up into a lovely guy and them grow up into be sociopaths. And the quote from a source was like, this provided somewhat of a booking challenge for the producers.
Hello, will you be on my podcast called I'm a Sociopath?
Exactly. But also, again, I have a bit of sympathy because, you often do have really big, bold ideas and then you think them through and you're like, we would get annihilated for that.
Yeah.
But it's also just not possible, you know what I mean? So I think what it all spoke to is the rush, and this wasn't Harry and Meghan's fault, the checkbooks were out to say, we'll throw all this money at you. Netflix did the same. And then it was like, oh, well, but what will you actually do? And is anyone interested in what you have to say if it's not talking about the royal family, which you've ostensibly left?
So what else was in there?
Also, the relationship dynamic between them. A source described their relationship as intensely passionate. They are so hot for each other. The way they look at each other, I should probably not be here right now, one person said.
I think that's accurate. Whenever you see them look at each other, they look at each other like that.
But then others said that it was a little bit Oedipus, that Meghan was essentially reparenting Harry and that he was trying to save her in the way that he couldn't save his mother. There was also a very interesting anecdote in there about Meghan allegedly shopping a potential memoir about a divorce. If she were to get divorced, would people be interested in a divorce memoir from her? So that was interesting.
That's weird.
Yeah, I think that the other thing that came through, and there was no smoking guns in this, right? So there was nothing that we haven't heard before. It was just really confirmation of all of those kind of rumours that they're difficult to work with, that they think they know best, that they're a bit clueless when it comes to making content.
Did the world need another profile on Meghan and Harry?
I ask the same question because one of the things that I think is really interesting about this, because yes, it's basically a lot of mean-spirited rumours stitched together and a lot of stuff we've heard already, as Mia said. So in 2017, Meghan did a proper cover with Vanity Fair. Normally a Vanity Fair cover that features a celebrity, not always, but very often is an agreed shoot. Probably Annie Leibovitz shot it. It cost $1 bajillion. A long-form interview. The journalist travels with you, hangs around like it's
access. It's access journalism.
It's access and it's deeply sourced and it's prestigious, right?
And it used to have to be that you'd only get a Vanity Fair cover if you gave them something, a big exclusive. Like, will you talk about the miscarriage no one knew you had or the divorce like Jennifer Aniston famously after Brad?
And so Vanity Fair, so when Meghan did that, it was the first time she'd ever spoken publicly about Harry. What is interesting to me is that we've gone from that, like her giving full access to them, to Vanity Fair running basically what in the business we'd call a ride around, which is they got a random picture of them, made it look really lovely and glossy, slapped it on the cover and then just wrote around everything we've already heard. And it's like, I wouldn't blame them for being really pissed off about that because this is an exact example of why they hate the media, right? Even the media who are supposedly the most credible, the ones who are on their side in inverted commas, clearly they're not anymore.
And remember, they did give access, Meghan in particular did give access to the cut, and they wrote the most snarky.
It wasn't actually.
I thought it was.
I don't think it was.
Snarky.
I think that was an interesting story. But a lot of, the criticism that's made is that they've never really understood that the media is not just PR. The media is independent. And
I think they understand that. I think they get taught that lesson 85 times a week.
But the problem is it's left them with nowhere to go to promote their genuine things.
Well, that's why she's back on Instagram.
So Meghan, you would imagine for a major Netflix launch show that, as Meghan has, and we spoke last week about how it's been pushed from January to March because of the LA fires, she would be doing traditional media. She would be doing a Vanity Fair cover, for example, or a People cover, which she still made. People still do seem to be on side. Or she would be doing talk show appearances. She would be doing all kinds of things. She isn't going to do any of that because she and Harry have very clearly drawn the lines of the media hate us for very good reason. But it kind of puts them in a difficult position then because they're celebrities. And
I wonder if there's a world in which
or maybe it's their year of Nup as well.
True. I wonder if there's a world in which they did give Vanity Fair something and then they took it back after the LA fires. Is that possible?
No, because the problem with magazines is that they're on very long lead times. But also when you're a Netflix, I mean, your talent is contractually obliged to promote things. Yeah. It's interesting because with the Polo documentary that Harry did that came out just before Christmas, they didn't seem to promote it. They didn't do interviews. They didn't. Maybe this is written into their contract that they won't. But it starts looking like not a very good deal, which is what all the trade press has been saying for a really long time, that it hasn't been a good deal, which is why Spotify didn't renew. She's doing a new podcast, however, with another podcast company called Limonata. But it's a little bit, they want a platform and they want fame, but they don't really have a lot to say. that people are interested in, because what people are interested in is not Meghan talking about feminism, it's Meghan talking about how hideous it was to be inside the royal family. And understandably, she doesn't want to do that anymore.
I disagree. I would read the absolute shit out of a long-form Vanity Fair profile where I got to see inside Meghan's house, where I got to see, like day in the lifey stuff. I'm tired of all the royal gossip. Like I've heard it all those stories. I mean, Harry wrote an entire book about that. Very good book. That was all about that. So now I still think in the same way I'm interested in all kinds of celebrities, I would still want to peek, but they understandably do not want to show. That brings us to the end of our first show in our new home. How do we feel it went, friends?
I like it.
I think it was great. I'll come back again tomorrow.
Which is lucky, because we will, as we mentioned, be back again tomorrow to talk about the inauguration. A massive thank you to all of you Out Louders for listening to our show today, and to our fabulous team for putting it together in our new home. We're going to be back in your ears tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.